you can't create like a rebuttal to an objection like that if it's about you. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's like, to answer your question, that was when it really started getting easy for me, was when it was less about me making money and more about the person. And now when we close someone with Imperium, we don't celebrate the cash collected or the revenue or the profit. We celebrate the life changed.
So man, where do I start with this? So today I have on Charlie Morgan, and have you heard of him right now? Maybe not, but are you going to know who he is in 5 years? I can almost guarantee that's going to be the case. So over the last few years, I've made an effort to surround myself with people that I grow from and that help me develop. And don't let Charlie's youthful looks fool you. His youthful good looks, right? His knowledge in...
Useful, mate.
I don't know. You're looking a bit younger than me, but his knowledge in sales, business, and mindset and ability to communicate that, especially, is top tier. And he provides more value than 99% of the people out there. And I really wanted to get some of his time to share with everyone, because he's got some insights for us that are going to help everyone. Whether it's a big business, small business, agency, everyone. I have learned a lot from Charlie, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today, Charlie. So tell me, introduce yourself and tell everyone why you're so awesome. And also tell me, what's the worst piece of sales advice you've ever heard?
Oh, damn. Okay. Well, I'll start with the introduction, a little bit easier. My name's Charlie Morgan. Jimmy's right. You probably don't know who I am right now, but if all goes according to plan, perhaps in 5 years, you might know who I am. I run a company called Imperium Agency, and our mission is to make client acquisition easy for online high-ticket businesses, whether that's for agency owners or coaches and consultants. I run a very small YouTube channel at present, and yeah, I've been doing this I've been in business now since I was 18 after dropping out. The worst sales advice I've ever been given is probably the whole ABC thing, always be closing. I mean, there's a lot of things that people have told me to do in the sales scenario that I've tested and realized after a while that they're not that good. So probably always be closing, that ABC thing. I don't know where it comes from or who created it, but you shouldn't always be closing, because sometimes there's prospects that you shouldn't be closing. Do you know what I mean? If it's not a good fit and you can't help someone, you shouldn't always be closing them. So yeah, I think that goes against a lot of my sales philosophies.
Awesome. Yeah. And we've spoken about this in depth, and I like I said, I like to surround myself with people that I can learn from and keep my network of people, as elite as I can, given how much value I can provide in return. And I like to think I know a little bit about sales, but there's very few times where you've mentioned something in your coaching calls. So I just, how we met is I actually did Charlie's course, paid for it with my own money, and got a huge amount of value from that. We just finished an interview, which is it's going to be on the Imperium Agency's channel.
Yeah.
Yep, on the YouTube. And there's very few times where I've gone, that actually doesn't make sense, or it's not based in experience. So what do you think is the most important traits of someone that's doing B2B sales? Like, as a B2B salesperson, what do you think makes a really good B2B salesperson?
Well, from a personality standpoint, ENFJ, so extroverted. From a personality standpoint, if you look at Myers-Briggs, ENFJ tends to be the best form of salesperson for high-ticket B2B. And I can only speak for high-ticket B2B because I've never sold anything else. I think that one of the most important, do you know what? I would just argue that conviction and empathy, if you have those two things, everything else falls into place. When we hire sales reps for our company, basically the only thing we really look for is, does the person actually love what they're selling? Like, I think a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking that, sales is an extroverted game, or to sell, you've got to be disagreeable. And we fall into these binary dichotomies of belief that sales has to be a certain way. But at the end of the day, sales is just a mode of communication between two individuals. And, albeit some of his practices are quite questionable, Jordan Belfort says, sales is the transfer of emotion, which is really true. And if you're talking to someone and you genuinely believe in what you're selling, and you know that if they buy it, their life's going to be better off. I think that's really the only thing you need to have. And it's not like a hard trait, because the thing I don't like about traits is if you say there's a certain trait that creates great salespeople, then a lot of people become discouraged because they haven't got that trait. Or when they go onto a sales call, they try and start behaving in a way that isn't natural to them. And that then becomes pretty obvious to the prospect, which, creates an awful lot of problems. And I've learned that training a lot of sales reps as well, that you can give people a process, but you should let their natural personality flourish. And you should never try to contain that, because if you do, then they start acting all weird, and then they start behaving in a way that's not conducive to how they should normally talk, which obviously then, interrupts their conviction. So yeah, I think that's the thing. I also wanted to ask you as well, Jimmy, what's the worst piece of sales advice anyone's ever given you?
It's interesting you asked that, because that question came from my thoughts about this. It's actually similar. I think the worst piece of advice that I've ever been given is, trying to force feed someone something that they don't want. It's actually better to qualify someone quickly that they're either not a right fit, or they don't want it. You can get to a no pretty quickly if you ask the right questions. So I think people saying, just jam it down their throat, keep jamming it just keep bashing them until they submit is never worked for me. And, it comes down to what you've said in the past about, I don't like to be treated like that. So maybe that's rubbed off on me that way. But I just think there's easier ways to sell, and there's better ways to sell than just smashing someone with a whole bunch of fancy words and just confusing them to the point where they just give up, because they feel so uncomfortable with the situation that the only way they can escape is either wholesale say no or give you money. I just don't think you need to put someone in that situation.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like, I like to sell like I'm some sort of referee, and I'm just looking and waiting to disqualify them. Like, I'm on the pitch and I'm watching them. I'm like, what can I do to get you off this call? Now, obviously not in a, if you do that to everyone, you're going to miss deals that you could have otherwise closed. But disqualification is just as important as qualification. And if you sign someone up who shouldn't have signed up, then your life will be hell, because, like, in my experience, the relationship you have with someone on a sales call is going to closely resemble the relationship you have with that person as you work with them. And if the initial conditions of your mutual business-ship, friendship, are built on foundations that are negative and pressureful and nasty, then what sort of clients do you expect to sign?
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
you don't want to handcuff someone to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's interesting you say that, because, sales is one of those things. It's a bit like any other combat sport, in my opinion. If you've ever done MMA or seen mixed martial arts, you know that it only takes not thinking about something or being slightly distracted to find out that you're on your back and someone's grounding and pounding the crap out of you, right? So sales is a bit like that as well. In my opinion, it's you've got to be focused in on the top of your game pretty much anytime you're interacting with someone in that kind of environment. So just exit the building. That was
I'm just pulling my curtain because I'm aware that the light might create
that's all right.
I was listening.
That's all good.
I was listening.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Like a single second of distraction, or as soon as you start becoming conscious of what you're doing, specifically to sales, you can just lose the entire call. I do a lot of call reviews with our sales reps, and you can almost always find one pivotal moment where the call falls apart. And it could be in the questioning stage, but the better the rep is, the later on you'll find the mistake. So, for example, I was one of my sales reps, a guy called Jack. He's a real killer, like real, 30-40% conversion rate on these, high ticket $6,000 deals. And I was reviewing one of his calls yesterday, and he rarely makes easy mistakes to make. So I'm always looking for the thing, why did this call not close? If the client's a good fit and they're qualified financially, they should buy. They should never be not allowed to buy if they're the right fit and we can genuinely help them, right? Not that it's permission based, but you get my point. And what happened is the client said to Jack, they said, all right, well that makes sense. So all of that pricing stuff you just explained, and the contract, could you drop an email to me about it? And Jack went, yeah, that's fine. And as soon as he did that, I said to him, it's basically what you've done there is you've just given his objection efficacy and agreed that his objection should have credence and he should now believe what he's saying. And then Jack was like, oh, shit. I was like, so when people lay little, it's not like the prospect is consciously laying a trap for you to fall into. But if someone's like, yeah, all right, well, listen, I'm really, really interested. Just drop me an email. What email have you got on file for me? If you answer that question in the affirmative, then the deal, you've just killed the deal, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So it's like, it's little things like that. If you're not paying attention, like you said, you're just going to get grounded and pounded from a persuasive perspective, I suppose.
So where does that leave you? So like, obviously you've done a lot of sales now. All the experience you have is based on just hitting the pavement, basically, from my understanding. And so what I had an inflection point when I was learning to sell. I had an inflection point where I went from being okay at selling to where I sort of am now, closing lots of deals and things like that. So where did you, what was that inflection point for you in your sales, in learning to sell, in your sales journey that went from, I'm only closing a little, thing, to being like, actually, I'm seeing into the matrix now and I really understand what this is about?
Yeah, I think for me, so my sales career started when I dropped out of university to do an apprenticeship. And I was working for a small marketing agency based in the southwest of the UK. And I would make roughly 200 cold calls, 250 cold calls every day. And in between those cold calls, I'd be doing, quote unquote, discovery calls to sell social media management services. I was not good at that at all. It sucked. I hated the job. I really didn't enjoy it. And after that, I thought, you know what, sales is not for me. Like, I do not enjoy sales. It later transpired to me that I was bad and didn't enjoy it and it sucked at it because I had no belief in what I was selling. Right, the social media management services that I was supposed to be convincing people to buy, they sucked, quite frankly, and I didn't believe in them. And that's no bad reflection on the person who owned the business, because they were a great mentor to me, but I just simply didn't believe in it. I went on then to start my own agency where I continued to sell, and I noticed it wasn't like a huge increase, but I started to get better at sales because I actually knew that if I signed the person, I was responsible for their results. And at that point, when I started, I didn't have massive confidence in my ability to deliver, but I had massive confidence in my values and integrity. And I knew that if someone gave me their money, I would stay up until 5 every morning to make sure they got what they wanted. And I did that for a while. And then basically, once I partnered up with Bo, with Northflow Consulting, which is the agency we sold, I knew that Bo had a product that was just unbelievable. And as soon as I went from, it's kind of like a 3-stage process. I sold something I didn't believe in. Then I sold something I kind of believed in. And then I sold something that I knew worked. And that was when I started seeing the matrix. And I think that a lot of it was just doing lots and lots of calls. I don't think it was just jumping straight into something that you can sell, that you believe in, that makes sales easy. But for me, the real turning point was when I was now responsible for these prospects. So if we were talking to gyms, which is what the marketing agency served, if I was talking to someone, and if I knew that our product could completely change their life, right? What started to happen as I realized that is I started to take sales way more seriously. I became way more diligent with listening back to calls, and it was no longer about closing deals and making money. It was more about changing lives. And as soon as I transitioned my paradigm from internal self-interest to I actually want to help people, and that's what this role allows me to facilitate, that's when I started taking it way more seriously. As soon as it became more about the people that I was helping and less about me, that's when I just really started to go completely hard on the training. And, I'd start to use it on sales calls. Jimmy, so if you're a prospect, for example, I'd be like, Jimmy, I totally understand you want to think about it. If I was in your shoes, I would be feeling the exact same way. And I'm really glad you brought this up because Luca, someone who worked with us right now, who's making all this money, he wanted to think about it as well. From my perspective, Jimmy, if you join us, we will change your life. And I can't even deny that. I know it's true. And I genuinely believe that we can help you. I understand you want to think about it. There's a bit of doubt, some anxiety and some fear, but I cannot let those emotions stand in the way of you getting to 7 figures and completely changing your life. So work with me here, share my confidence. You can't create a rebuttal to an objection like that if it's about you. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's to answer your question, that was when it really started getting easy for me, was when it was less about me making money and more about the person. And now when we close someone with Imperium, we don't celebrate the cash collected or the revenue or the profit. We celebrate the life changed. And that's a really good way to create a sales team as well. And it only works if you've got a decent product you believe in. But if that answers your question, that was really the pivotal moment for me.
Yeah, it's 100% it does. I think it's always been my secret weapon is being able to, I can't verbally joust as well as others out there. I can't, maybe I'm not as articulate as others out there, but one thing I can do is convey conviction very well when I talk. And, everyone's got there's plenty of ways to win a fight, in the MMA, as there is plenty of ways to do everything. And I did the same thing, listened to a lot of Art Subject and Zig Ziglar, and just went back in time and started learning. And I found all the things, picked up the little nuggets and practiced them. And it's nice to hear someone else think a similar way about sales. That it's a lot of it's got to do with having a genuine conviction in what you sell and believing that it actually does something that you believe in. And it's a lot easier to sell something that you can just pass the belief on to someone else with than it is to try and just extract money out of people's pockets. Now, it's another question I wanted to ask you personally, because I know, you've had Northflow, had an exit. Congratulations on that, by the way. Not easy to do in the marketing space, as I'm well aware. You've also got the course that you guys have, which is the course that I did. That's doing really well. But, you've come from basically a job selling for others to effectively running two 7-figure businesses. How did you get from not having any experience really running a business to where you are now, running these businesses and teams and things like that? What were the inflection points in that process?
I think that identity is the key. I'll sort of flesh that out and explain it. I mean, it's kind of like anyone's journey. I mean, so this is technically my 6th or 7th year in business. That's a really good question. I have to sort of take it back. All right. Well, I think it starts with ambition. And it starts with, if I'm honest with you, some very personal negative emotions towards myself. When I was a kid, when I was 18 or 19, before I really had anything going for me, I didn't really like myself. I'd been bullied quite heavily in secondary school. I could never get a girlfriend. I was stick thin. I was addicted to video games. And I'm not ashamed to admit it these days. I was before, but most of my early success drive and will came from self-hatred, which is quite deep. And I'm lucky that happened, because a lot of people struggle with self-hatred and then they enter down. My pain came from business growth. A lot of people's comes from alcohol, right? So I was quite fortunate that my psychological makeup and my parents was all conducive to me having growth, as opposed to, more trauma. I wasn't really under trauma, but I didn't really like myself. Very early on, I learned a lot about mindset, and I'd always been interested in psychology. And I think the most important thing that I worked on was my mindset and myself. And I don't mean that from a personal development perspective of, suddenly, journaling and then walking for 20 minutes a day. Like, I started to look into extremely advanced topics around philosophy and identity and Jungian psychology and all this stuff. And I started to build and develop future versions of myself on paper that I wanted to become. What I realized very early on, I was very fortunate to realize this, is if you want to get something, you shouldn't go after the thing. You should go after the person that can. So what I started doing is I started realizing, right, if I want to make $10,000 a month, or if I want to make $100,000 a month, it's not about me making that. It's about me becoming the man who can easily make that happen, right? So what I did is I started looking at my goals, and when I was starting, I wanted to make $10,000 a month. So I thought, well, I don't know anyone making $10,000 a month, which is part of the problem. But I started looking at people who were making 6 figures, multi-6 figures, and I started extrapolating their personality traits, their belief systems, and just their paradigms and the way they saw the world. And I started to realize that if I was the person that could make 10 grand a month, I'd already have 10 grand a month. So then what I had to do was release my ego and accept that I wasn't I wasn't the man that could. And as soon as I started building a version of myself that I knew, if I step into this frame and this person, if I let go of my current sense of self and identity and release my ego and that sense of self-certification that's, very prevalent these days, and I step into the shoes of he who can, then the goal will manifest. And that's kind of been my underpinning strategy to go from thing to thing. So another example of this is with Imperium, we were doing 100 grand a month with me doing the sales calls. And for us to get to 300 grand a month, I didn't see it as like a jump in revenue. I saw it as a jump in identity. So I was like, all right, well, if I want to do this, now it's time for me to become someone that can hire, manage, train, and facilitate the growth of a team and a culture. And so it's kind of like every single inflection point or step of the way, it's not been business growth, it's been personal growth that then manifests in the business, if that makes sense. And I knew that from a very early age. And I think that's really been one of the most important things to my growth, is to not have, it's to like have an identity and have a sense of self, but to not be attached to anything about yourself, because at any moment's notice, you might need to let it go to grow. I think that's the most important thing that I've learned. And, I've got like little printed off PDFs of like, Charlie Morgan version 2, Charlie Morgan version 3. And then I would, we're usually the only limiting factor a human has is their beliefs, except from energy and time, it's beliefs. So I also worked very heavily on my beliefs. I knew that if I found something hard, if I found sales hard, for example, it wasn't because sales was hard, it was because I made it hard. There's a quote that says, you don't see the universe for what it is, you see it for who you are. So all of these things that I found difficult, like saving money or making sales or booking appointments or delivering client results, I wasn't just seeing them objectively, I was just seeing them for how I should see them. So as soon as I let go of that, it really started to work. But I think that's like the most coherent answer I could give you in a short time. But that was really the key, I think.
I think also too, just from the outside looking in, and I like to think I've listened to over 100 hours of you talking. We're only talking about this in the last thing. I've got the 411 on you and Bo, right? And I think you're right. I think it's that. I definitely think that I do the same thing. Like when I had my children, I remember a very, very clear line in the sand that I jumped over when I had my first child, and I went from being a fun, it's not, I don't mourn for that person, but I went from being like, I can see why guys go from being like, happy-go-lucky people to grumpy old men really quick. And having kids did that to me. And like, I'm just different now. Where I think, and what I take solace in is that the core is still there, right? And I think that's why it works. It's worked for you, because there's a lot of people that attempt to do what you're doing, but they basically just try and turn into someone else, wholesale. Yes. They'll go, I want to be Grant Cardone or Sam Ovens because I want to make $1 billion. And they just try and dress like him, be like him, do everything, mirror them, right? Without maintaining the core of what makes you Charlie. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, you're right. I think the thing that's stayed very steady and solid throughout my trajectory is my value system. The things that I hold near and dear, and like all of my actions and behaviors and habits are run through these values. Things like always like give more than you promise, for example, or just having genuine integrity, or, just doing it because it's the right thing to do, not because it benefits you. Like all of these little values that I've always had, which actually I had to sort of develop. And like at 18, I had to start thinking like, what sort of man do I want to become? Because prior to that, I didn't have those values. And as soon as I stepped into those and thought, right, these are my core, you call it a Polaris star, my North Star, right? These are the things that this is how I will manifest myself around these things. Because that's really it's like the YouTube channel, for example. I don't really care too much about the subscribers and the views. Obviously, I get serotonin and dopamine from seeing an increase in subscribers, but it's the connection with knowing that people who watch my videos actually are better off. And I like that. But I think to also answer your question, the more I've sacrificed, the more I've grown. So like the more stuff that I've got rid of, I don't mean get rid of because you don't get rid of your family, you don't get rid of relationships. But the
You're
more
not living
things,
in the cave as a hermit sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. But the more things that I've got rid of that I didn't need, I've basically grown, because all the energy and time that goes into like scrolling through Instagram isn't conducive to business growth. So as soon as I got rid of Instagram, I took all of that energy and time and plumped it into my business, and it just went from there basically. Also meeting Bo. Yeah.
Yeah. So is Bo, because you probably know him better than probably anyone, right? Outside of his family or what have you. What makes it work so well between you and Bo as business partners? Because I've always wondered this myself. I'm very lucky because I've been with my wife almost 20 years now. She's full time in the business. We've always worked together on things.
Yeah.
It's never been an issue for me. But you hear horror stories of business partners that go into business, especially because you guys didn't necessarily start Northflow exactly the same time. There was different dynamics, different relationship when you started. Obviously, Imperium, you guys started together, but what do you think it makes it work between you and Bo that many others fail at achieving?
Yeah. I think there's two things. There's really three things. The first thing is a shared goal. We both want the same thing. We both have a similar, like, Bo's not just a business partner, he's like a partner for life. And that's how we see it. Like, I'll be working with him when I'm 70 or 80. So that's the first thing, is we've got very similar goals, not in terms of what we want financially and stuff, but we want the same sort of thing. Second thing is similar values. We were both mentored by the same person, by Sam Ovens, very heavily. We're in this mastermind now. What that means is a lot of our business philosophies and the way we believe things should be done are aligned, which sometimes creates problems because then we don't entertain perspectives that we don't share. But that's another thing. The third, and I think one of the most important things from a dynamic standpoint, is we never, ever argue, ever. So one of our principles for our company is that anyone at any time, regardless of their position, can challenge anyone on anything, and no ego is allowed to happen. So, for example, I could propose an idea to Bo, as I often do, and Bo can completely tear it apart, but we never get offended about that, if that makes sense. So there's no personal insults and everything like that, but Bo and I have this sort of mutually unconscious understanding that upon suggestion of idea or perspective of doing something, the other person can attack it. And it's not like, and I think we've basically never had a single argument. We've never got angry with each other. We've never had like the silent treatment or anything like that. We talk very often. We communicate how we're feeling very often. We talk a lot about mindset. So if I have a week off because I'm burned out, Bo will understand. If Bo has 2 weeks off because he's got a problem, I'll understand. We're very communicative, if that's even a word, ironically, with how we feel and like how we're doing. But the main thing is just like, he can just propose an idea and I've got the right to completely attack it. I'd never attack him, and likewise vice versa. So no ego is ever involved. It's not about being right or wrong for us over each other. It's about what's best for the business. And we love the business as much as we love ourselves. So it's always about what's best for the business, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think that those are the three things.
And is there a separation between skill sets? Obviously, Bo has sold in the past. He's open to that, and he's open to the fact that he doesn't necessarily like selling that much. He's made that abundantly clear in the coaching calls and things. But do you think it helps having a different skill set and complementary skill set to each other?
Yeah, 100%. Because otherwise, you'd be stepping over each other's toes, and it becomes more about who can do the job better than who can actually do it. So for me, my role within the company is extremely external as opposed to being client facing, where we both build the product, but I will be the person that takes care of all new clients, not anymore because we've got sales reps, but I'll manage the sales team. I'm producing content and basically taking care of the external side of the business and working on the product. Bo's far more operations orientated. He prefers being in spreadsheets and metrics, tinkering around with different variables and building different teams and stuff like that. If we were both sales orientated, it would be a nightmare because we'd be stepping over each other's toes. And I think as well, like the way that our business partnership came to fruition wasn't through friendship, and it was through necessity and an actual fit, as opposed to, oh, we like each other, let's go into business. So when I started, because Bo started Northflow before I got involved, and he was doing around multi-six figures when I started selling for him. And then I helped him get to 7 figures, and that's when we partnered because he saw the value in it. I had my own agency. I was awful at service delivery, really good at sales. Bo was really good at service delivery, awful at sales. Awful is quite a strong word, but you get the point. And we just fit like two pieces of a puzzle, basically. And because of that, our skill sets aligned, and we both saw the value we could each produce, and we stayed in our own lanes, and that was that. It was worked really, really well. I'm very, 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 I don't often recognize how fortunate I am to have Bo and to have a relationship with him the way that I have it, because it's rare from my understanding.
It is incredibly. I was gonna say that it's probably for every partnership that works, there's probably 600, 800 that don't.
Yeah.
And it's the same with marriage. It's the same with everything. But it still astounds me that you guys complement each other so well, considering, because you were mentioning you've only met once in real life. Yeah,
we've never met.
Never met in real life. How
No.
amazing is that? I think that's testament to the. I think that's also an element of being humble and being honest and pragmatic about your skill sets and what you know and don't know. Because if one of you was sitting there going, yeah, I understand what you're saying, and just getting into arguments all the time, of course it's not going to work. But you guys, yeah, I'm very very envious of the position you guys are in. Not because I'm not in that position myself, but more just I know that there's a lot of businesses out there that would kill for the arrangement that you guys have and have the extra capacity and everything that goes with it.
It's a massive blessing, and Bo's significantly more intelligent than I am. He doesn't get the credit he deserves from that perspective because I'm the loud one. I've learned so much from working with him, and like if it was just me trying to run Imperium, it probably wouldn't work. And Bo recognizes if it was just him trying to run Imperium, it probably wouldn't work. And I don't often exercise gratitude enough, but every now and then we exchange a little message at like 11 p.m. at night, like, mate, you're amazing. It's so good to work with you. I can't wait for the next 20 years. But yeah, we have very similar values, a very similar goal, and basically no ego.
You're doing the right thing when your actions express gratitude on behalf of what you do.
True.
So, your actions, his actions express some mutual, respect and gratitude. And that's the best way to be. Because if you have to constantly say how good each other are and how thankful you are, that's not necessarily healthy either. So I think you guys are just, that's why when we first met, that's why I was saying, I would just want to see how this works because, I'm a lot like you are. I'm very, I'm very positively driven and sales driven, and I'm able to sell concepts very well and sell ideas very well. Generally that doesn't lead to that good execution on the back end because it's onto it's onto how do you improve things before they're set up and done and executed. So it's really amazing. Now, one thing I wanted to cover, I acknowledge that time is a sensitive thing here, but I just really want to...
Let's extend it to another 20 minutes, half an hour or something.
Yeah, cool. So obviously, I'm not a worldly statesman by any stretch of the imagination, but I have probably a little bit more real world business experience, and I know how difficult it is to cover off, to be playing all the bases as well as batting, as well as pitching, as when you're starting a business and developing and growing a business, especially. So where have you seen some of the chinks in the armor have been growing, firstly, the agency to 7 figures, but then the course? Because the course to me is of a specific interest because it's something that I want to do in the future is develop a course. And the framework that you guys have done to do that is the sort of model. That's how I'm going to model it. But I'm curious to know, you would have no doubt had teething problems the whole way through. And where are the chinks in the armor along that sort of ride?
I think it's very easy to underestimate how much work a good program actually takes to put together. For example, I recently made the mindset module for our course, which is a 18-hour training series.
That's like a life's work.
But it took me 5 months, and I thought it would take me 2 weeks. So one thing that I hate about the business that I've done is, as a pattern, is promising things that I don't deliver on quickly enough. And that's one of the main things consistently throughout the business. We've always been too optimistic with how quickly we can get something delivered. And that's what I was telling you earlier about the mastermind. It's the same. We realized we're making the same mistake. Sales talent is another big one. We had a sales rep for Northflow before, but we just got really lucky. With this business, we've now got 3 sales reps that are good and getting better and doing really well, and I love them to bits. But prior to that, we made a lot of mistakes with sales hiring and such. And I think, what are the chinks in the armor? It's a very easy business to run. And I don't mean easy in the sense that Like, it doesn't require any effort. What I mean by easy is it's very simple and straightforward. And what that means is that, like, we only really have one variable for everything, right? And this is where, like, we don't have that many chinks that I can see of. The main chink has always been our mindset. It's always been, like, actually getting up and doing it. Like, sometimes just not being consistent with the work. If I'm honest with you, that happens irregularly now, but at the beginning it was more regular than it was irregular. And that was always the biggest chink. All the problems, all of the issues we'd face would manifest from Bo and I unintentionally but consciously deluding ourselves that problems didn't exist because we didn't want to address them. And if something manifests as a genuine problem, it's something that we could have fixed really early on, but we chose not to because it was too hard, right?
Yes.
But the reason that I say it's easy is because we truly only have one variable for everything. So we've got, put it this way, we've got one product, we've got one website, we've got one sales process, we've got one script and one line of questioning. We've got one way of handling objections, although we do have more because you need more. We've got one contract. We've got one onboarding process for all clients. We've got one community group. We've got, what else is it? Like, you know, we've got basically just one of everything, right? When it comes to a client journey, it is as simple as humanly possible. And because of that, like, if we have an issue in one area, so say we had like 4 products and we had a sales problem, it will take way too long to diagnose what the problem is and even know what the issue is, if that makes sense. And also we track literally everything with spreadsheets. Like, if I want to check and assess the health of any system in the business, whether it's a certain sales rep's conversion rate or the profit of the thing or like how an appointment set is getting on, I can do it in literally 2 clicks. And knowing that is helpful. But, you know, as far as chinks go, it's always been our mindset, basically.
Do you think that so a lot of what I heard then was, you know, there's a lot of things, because I noticed this, right? And I may not have made it conscious, and front of mind until you mentioned it there, but I noticed I wouldn't say it's a very distinct line in the sand, but especially around your YouTube channel, you went from like not taking it seriously and not prioritizing it to it becoming like the single biggest priority. Well, not the biggest priority, but a huge priority. Yeah. And I feel like that's one of those things. It's like, you know, it was a big hurdle to overcome and face, you know, doing consistently with volume and everything. And then, you know, once it went to that, it mindset changed, right? And what I was getting at is, I find it really interesting you say that, because I wonder if you went back in time and started Imperium Agency again, like what would you have done differently from the start that would have like removed all those chinks and armors and heartache that you discovered now? Like, where you are now is in a pretty good position. You know, what would you have done differently when you started it?
I would have lowered our profit margins. So what I mean there is spend more money on stuff that helps us grow. That was one of the biggest mistakes we made, was maintaining but then boasting about 85% margins. So Bo and I were like, you know, oh yeah, we like, you know, 100 grand this month. Like, we kept 80 grand of it, 85 grand of it. But that was a huge mistake, because what we're doing now, what we should have been doing is building teams, you know, building infrastructure for different acquisition systems. And most importantly, reinvesting all the money into the product. So Bo and I have a goal for next year. Actually, I won't say that part, but we've got this plan for next year to spend a significant amount of money on the product. And basically investing in other courses and people that are good to record modules for us about client acquisition that we otherwise wouldn't be able to. That's one thing that I regret and wish we'd done more of, is taken all of the money we were making and just put it straight back into the product. It's kind of like what Mr. Beast does with his YouTube videos. Yeah. All the sponsorship money he gets. And
I immediately thought of that when you said that, actually.
It's kind of like, because it's a feedback thing. And Mr. Beast understands systems thinking, and you know, I realized that was a mistake we made, and also becoming comfortable with the product. You know, we're re-engineering it now and recreating it now and redoing it. But, you know, we went through like a 6-month period where we didn't add anything to it or develop it because we were too focused on acquiring clients. And we're now in a position where we can generate 200 or 300 sales calls a month without doing anything. And I say without doing anything, we've got 2 appointment setters, an email system, and YouTube. and like they just kind of run themselves, and everything throughout our sales process is social proof, and like we can actually do it. And it's the product that developed that. Like client acquisition is only as easy as it is hard for you to make your product. So this is an important thing people don't understand. Like they want client acquisition to be easy, but they want their product to be easy to make. The harder your product is to make, the easier client acquisition will be in the long term. So like, but you kind of have to pick, like, do you want easy acquisition, hard product, or hard acquisition, easy product, right? So I think that's but I mean we've got a really good product, but I'm also terrified it's never good enough, which manifests recently, but that's the thing, lowering profit margins and spending more money on stuff that actually helps us grow.
It's the single biggest thing I hate about the digital SMMA marketing space. Like I'm very open and very candid when I say that I hate the marketing space. I really do. I because I'm technically proficient at it, doesn't mean I can't not like what the industry is. And the reason I don't like that is, we were talking about figures and we were talking about numbers in the last interview, and they are important. Top line revenue is important, but the amount of people I've spoken to, because I've always run this as like you would run a brick and mortar business, because it works in the digital space doesn't mean I don't have an office and I don't have 12 people in here. It operates like a real business. Yep. And there's this bizarro world that the internet lives in that seems to think that because like you said, the cost of goods is so much lower than, say, a traditional business, that the rules of business don't necessarily apply. Like you were saying, you're taking 85% margin because you can. There's a lot of agency owners out there that they go, I'm going to make 50 grand a month and keep 45 of it, and not realizing like actually there's a certain amount that a traditional business will invest back into their business to grow it through necessity a lot of the time, because in the mechanical space, if you're a mechanic, your hoists break. You have things that break down and stuff. So you just naturally get used to investing back into the tools and the equipment that grow what you do. The marketing space doesn't seem to think like that. They do one thing and they set it up and they burn it to the ground. And then it's like, okay, well, let's rebuild it into something else and burn that to the ground. Yeah,
I agree. People are very transient. I think if I were to take your phrase, I would rephrase it. I wouldn't say I hate the marketing space. I'd say I hate the nature of the marketing space.
Yeah, 100%.
If that makes sense.
That's what I mean.
The marketing space can be a really exciting, fun place to hang out, and you can add and receive value in many ways. But the nature of it is conducive to certain types of people taking advantage of other people and getting away with it. And I don't like that, but it's the nature of it, and it's kind of how it runs. But
yeah. And your actions decide what part of that space you want to be in, because it's like, that's why I do what I do, and the way I do it specifically. It's not the most profitable way to run an agency, I can assure you that, but it's what it is it's ethical, and I know with conviction when I do tell someone I'm going to get them a result, there's a very good chance it's going to happen, probably more so than others. And it's just interesting that you said that about that, because it's a lot of what you mentioned there about investing back in the business and growing the business from the start, and growing the resources. You can see the people in the marketing space, because it's way more transparent in the marketing space, that like your Mr. Beast, right? There's a lot of people that can't comprehend how he's able to spend $6 million building a Squid Game set. They just, like, the people that admire Mr. Beast and watch what he does, they just can't comprehend how, you spend $6 million to do this, but when you listen to him talk, he just treats it like a real business, and he just invests back into it.
Do you know Mr. Beast actually lost money on that Squid Game video?
Oh, really? No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't know the exact figure, but there's an interview with him talking about it and how much it cost and the merch sales he made and the AdSense revenue, and he actually lost, like, I don't know how much, but he lost money from it, which is really
interesting. Well, I mean, there's got to be a physical limit to how much, like that. It's like everything, you can only invest so much into something, and then you diminish the return on investment. And the poor guy, he had to test that at some point, right?
I think it's not like he knows he lost money, but long term he wins. So
Yeah,
it's kind of like
100%.
I've been studying Jeff Bezos and Amazon a lot, and like one of Bezos's most most common strategies when it comes to flushing out other e-commerce businesses is to lower prices on certain products to the point where he loses money, but to go underwater with larger oxygen reserves, i.e. cash, than other people, and take that loss for as long as possible until everybody else is dead, and then he resurfaces and increases the prices again. Like that's actually like a genuine strategy that Amazon has. You know, have big cash reserves, take short-term losses, and in the long term, everyone else is dead, you resurface, then you've got a monopoly, which happens like very frequently. So I think with the Mr. Beast video, I wasn't trying to point out that you were wrong in any way, shape or form. It was more from the premise that like he might have lost money on that, but everyone talks about it.
Yeah.
Like what price do you put on people's word, you know? So I think like in the long term, that video will make him a ton of money, but just in the short term, it might not. But that's the other thing about the online space is it's like, I think you could, I don't know what the statistic is and there's no way of measuring it, but I would guess that 85-90% of people that start an online business will not be around to continue running it in 10 years. People just don't think long term. And that's a huge issue.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was only saying this to someone else before. Not that I would ever condone the Chinese and their actions and things like that, but there's a reason why, there's a reason why they grew so quickly, so fast. This is the Chinese nation, right?
Yeah.
Is most democratic governments, they think 3 years ahead or 4 years ahead because that's the election cycle. So long-term planning doesn't exist. Whereas China goes, okay, well, we want Taiwan back at some point. If it takes us 50 years, it takes us 50 years. If it takes us 70, we want Hong Kong back, we'll wait 99 years till your lease expires and then we'll just take it back. You know, I as not comparing myself to China anyway, but I've always tried to develop this agency a bit like that. It's like, what happens short term is irrelevant to me. It's like, it's just the ebb and flow, the nature of the beast. But, you know, what's going to happen 5 years from now, 7 years from now? What's my plan 7 years from now? Because I have every intention of existing then. So if you go in with that mindset, I feel like a lot of people come into the marketing space going, I'm just going to grab as much cash as I can until the merry-go-round stops turning around for me, and then I'll go back to doing another thing in the internet. Because it's really in vogue at the moment, as you would have seen, like the SMMA key, you know, like bandwagon is really like supercharged at the moment. Everyone wants to start a social media marketing agency, and it's super in vogue on TikTok and things like that. And when you actually peel back the people that are giving the information, a lot of the people that are giving the information are telling people exactly that. You know, like, oh, this is how you can run an agency with no work. This is how you can make $10,000 a month with 1 hour work a week. It's like, real businesses don't operate like that.
I think, like, from a marketing perspective, if you are a short-term thinker and a bit of an idiot, it makes sense because the closer your message is aligned to what unconsciously people desire, the more money you'll make. But like on my YouTube channel, when I'm telling people about what we do, helping people start agencies, commonly I'm a very negative, pessimistic person about it. I'm like, yeah, it's possible, but it's going to take you 12 months of absolute agony and pain to get it off the ground and make it work. And I think that's why my channel's growing relatively fast-ish pace. It's not that fast, but why it's growing somewhat is because there's some transparency, and a lot of people have been lied to, and they also sense this, you know, element of dishonesty with these people that tell you it's easy. Anyone that tells you starting a marketing agency is just idiot, because like they know like it's not easy. You're literally lying to people to get them to buy your course, and also like if you set the expectation it's easy, and then they buy your course and they're expecting it to be easy, it won't be easy, which means your reputation is going to be even worse. So short term, it's a great way to just grab cash, but long term, the only thing that I really care about is the long term, like 20, 30 years.
Yep.
You know, in Japan, a short term business plan is considered to be 20 years. So there's something about Asia, they seem to do it the right way, but you know, just
long term game, and it's interesting you say that, and I won't take up too much more of your time with this, but like, I always thought it would be a really, really good course to develop a course that's like a bit of an anti-agency thing. It's not necessarily like anti-agency in the traditional sense, but going, look, if you want to start an agency and do it properly and are willing to put in the work and the effort and the time, this is the course for you. There's nothing easy in this course. It's just hard work and tenacity and everything like that, I think you would do pretty well out of a course like that if you actually had the content to deliver in it. Because like, that's what I tell people. It's like, you know, they hear the top line revenue figure of this agency. Oh, you're doing so well. I was like, yeah, but you don't realize that I spend like $55,000 a month, $60,000 a month keeping people employed. You know, like and then I spent $60,000 starting the agency properly from the start. Like everything I did was developed to hit seven figures. Like from the very start, the branding, everything is just the microphone. It was all, I had a picture of what that looked like, and then I just worked towards it. But I've worked the hardest I've ever worked in my life. And I was, like I said, I was in the Navy for a long time and, you know, things like that. I've worked the hardest I've ever worked in my life in this easy to, you know, the marketing space, which is supposed to be sitting 4 hours on a beach drinking pina coladas. But I honestly think if there was a course that was like, you know, if you're willing to put in the work and time and effort, you can build something that's going to support you and your family, or earn you a decent living. It's not about making, you know, millions of dollars. It's about, okay, well, you can get rid of the job you have and have a decent lifestyle doing something you enjoy.
Yeah. I think the financials are glorified as well. So let's say you're running a marketing agency, right? That you start a marketing agency and you get to $10,000 a month, right? Well, the first thing, like what's going to happen there is you've got $4,000 in overheads for staffing. You immediately lose 40% of that money because, you know, it's going to people to run the thing for you, or, you know, you've got team members or softwares or whatever. You've been an idiot and bought something. And then on top of that, you've got $6,000 left. In the UK, you pay 20% profit tax. So then you basically get stripped back another $1,200, which leaves you with $4,800. Then Stripe hits you with a 3% processing fee, which might not sound like a lot, but you still lose like $120 off that. So then you're left with $4,700. And then you've also got to, you know, and it's like people are like, yeah, $10,000 a month, but then you're left with 4,700, and then you withdraw that from the business personally, and then you're going to pay 40% on that. So then you've really only got like $2,800 left from 10K. It's not like this glorified, automated, easy thing. Like it's horrible and hard. And like, you know, you really start to see the personal financial reward at multi 6, 7 figures. But people who want to get $10,000 a month, they don't even know that it's not that fun. Like, you know,
it's not. And it's super telling too. I had a person I informally mentor, and he come to me and he took on this project, and I said, dude, can you deliver what you're actually saying? He's like, yeah. I've got Filipino team. We'll be able to do this. Just basically, I'm leaving it up to the man upstairs. I've got this team. They promised me all this kind of stuff. We've got to deliver. 7 months in, he goes, oh, Jimmy, I'm not going to be able to deliver this. Can you have a look? So I had a look, and I was like, dude, what they've set up's not going to work. Like, I'm sorry. Like, from an SEO perspective, they've just done it wrong. And I was like, dude, you probably should, like, because he's like, oh, how can we turn this around in 9 months? I was like, you can't, man. Like, it's just not how it works. And I said, you should probably give him, you know, why are you still taking his money if you know you're not going to get him a result? And he goes, oh, yeah, but I'm currently in England at the moment on a holiday, and I kind of need the money. So he was basically telling me he was willing to rip someone off to fund his lifestyle, knowing full well he was never going to get the result.
I think,
and I stopped talking to him after that. I was like, this is not cool.
If you observe, like, so let's step out of the online space and observe traditional brick and mortar businesses, right? So let's say that you want to, let's say you want to open, I don't know, don't know what but let's say you want to open like a hair salon, right? Now, I don't know much about that, obviously, right? But like, let's say that. Now, to open that, you're not going to open a hair salon if you don't already know hair. If you don't know how to cut people's hair and deliver a good, you know, haircut to someone, or a barber or a female, or like, let's say you're opening, like, I don't know, a chiropractic clinic. You're not going to do that if you don't know how to actually help people from a chiropractic perspective. So if you observe people that are really successful salon owners, they understand how to cut hair and give someone a better haircut than all their team. Whereas with digital marketing, people go in and they're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to start this business. I've got no idea how any of it works, but I'll just hire a media buyer. It's like, if you were going to if you had to put down £50,000 or dollars on a location and put people on payroll, you would like to know that you can actually deliver what you're saying you can deliver to people. But for some reason, that logic doesn't transpire into the online space. And it baffles me. The best people I know, the people that genuinely are always at 7 figures like yourself, are the people who actually know how the fuck they get results for people. And they don't just, you know, blindly wish and pray that, if put it this way, with that guy you explained, right? It's a bit of a paradox because the client is the sucker, unfortunately. The client has trusted someone who's just given him his word, and that guy's gone on to trust a team who have given their word, and that team have probably trusted someone else who have given their word. So it's just like this chain of just like bullshit, basically. And it needs to stop, but it won't stop. It's just human nature. But businesses are way more wise to it now. That's why it's so much harder to book appointments and close people. Like, you know, it's the reason why you hesitated with Imperium, primarily because you've been screwed over before. So it's kind of like
it's sad that it's that state of affairs, right? How every conversation I have with a business starts with them getting ripped off for $5,000. Well, you know, they're perceived to being ripped off. Whether they have is subjective, but you know, they've paid $10,000 for something. They felt like they haven't gotten results, and that's the end of the conversation. It's like, oh, I got ripped off for $10,000, but I didn't do anything about it. I just copped it on the chin and moved on. If you walked into a car yard and bought a car for $10,000 and it didn't run, you think you would just walk away from the car? I don't know why it applies. And I just want to quickly add this. Like, I get asked a lot how I got the initial traction in this, because I came from, like, you know, being on the tools and working in the corporate world to marketing. Even though I'd done a bit of it before, I had never taken clients on. The first 3 clients I had, I was very, very honest with them and said, look, guys, I'm going to give you a discount on what I do in exchange for the amount of risk you're taking working with me, because I have no track record. I for myself I do, but not working with clients. I'm going to give you a discount, but what I will give you is absolutely everything I've got. You know, like you said, I'm going to stay up till 5 a.m, making sure that you get results. And if I can't get them, I will make sure you get them somehow. And you're going to get a discount based on the fact that I have no results yet. Once I have no one else is going to get this. That's what I said to them. And I've got 3 clients like that. And those 3 clients are still working with me today. And I feel like if I turned around to them, because I had some big hiccups with those guys as I was learning, and the teething issues, especially around content and things. And because I framed it properly, and I was very honest about my skill set and very honest about abilities and what I can and can't do, they went from being, they couldn't help but advocate on my behalf, even though I'd made mistakes and stuffed up. They were happy to advocate and go, oh, Jimmy, you know, just next time, don't do this with someone else. You know, we were in cahoots. We were like, they were trying to get me to the stage where I could do that. They were just basically championing it. And I think that's what's missing, is like, people think that businesses care. Like, they feel, I don't know what it is, but especially younger gentlemen, they feel like they need to give off a certain vibe or a certain aura or a certain thing for people to give them money. And what I found, the more I'm myself and the more honest I am about things, the more people are willing to give me money. Yeah. And so, like, it's been a feedback loop for me, a positive feedback loop. It's like, okay, the more honest I am, the more money I make. Well, I'm just going to be more and more honest and more transparent and sincere. And I'm just making more and more money. I mean, that's, I think
it's really true. That's kind of like our funnel that our YouTube channel comes from. I'm just going to pull the curtain again. Hang on.
Yeah, go for it.
The light just creeps around. But our funnel that all of our YouTube traffic goes to, like, there's a video on there, and the first thing I say is, all right, this is a funnel. It's designed to sell you something. I'm here to try and get you to buy something from me. I'm not going to pretend it's some sort of free training. I'm not going to pretend there's a free webinar. I'm not selling a course with a 7 on the end. I'm trying to sell you something genuine that works. And if you give me a second, I'll explain it. And that funnel converts better than anything we've ever found. So, like, you know, and also, like, when I'm on YouTube asking people to subscribe to me, I say, please don't turn on the bell notification icon, because it will distract you from important work. And, like, it's little things like that I get messages about all the time. People being like, why the hell do you say that? And I'm like, you don't understand. You just have to do what everyone else isn't doing, which is the right thing, because we're in this nature of market where it's everyone does the wrong thing. But, like, I get people on Imperium sales calls when I used to do them. They were like, yeah, I want to get to, like, they're doing like nothing. I want to get 50 grand a month in like 12 months. I'm like, listen, 3 years, 2-3 years, maybe, but we can't do that for you in 12 months. Do you want to continue with the call? I really appreciate you actually telling the truth there. You know, and it just gives you, like, if you want people's trust, honesty is the only way to go, in my opinion. So
It's so
refreshing.
powerful in this space. Yeah. And it's so powerful in this space. And if anyone's watching this that hasn't got an agency yet or is wanting to start an agency, that is the secret. I came out of an industry in agriculture where everyone was honest.
Yeah.
You don't build 30-year relationships with a farmer as a business and make millions and millions of dollars if you're not honest and transparent and continually providing service. And I made a video about this. And so I came into this space taking what I thought was the right way to run business. And I found that actually, like, because no one's doing it, it's like 10 times more effective.
Yeah.
And so when I started, I was doing what I was seeing. I did Ryan Stewart's course on SEO, and I was doing what he was suggesting, which taught me good fundamentals about SEO. But I was like, wait a minute, why am I doing this way? If everything in my gut is telling me I sold millions and millions of dollars of machines being honest and transparent and building relationships, it should work here. I don't see why it wouldn't.
Yeah.
And it's why I had the unnatural growth curve that we've had as an agency. And that's my advice, is like, ignore the people that are trying to turn $1 into $2 without, if the conversation you have with someone that's teaching you a course is like, oh, this is how you turn $1 into $2. Don't fuck the customers, fuck the clients. You know, it's about $1 to $2 and it's about how to do that most efficiently. Then you'll make $1 to $2, but will you be around in 5 years and you know, supporting a family, supporting your lifestyle goals like ourselves, right? You know this, Charlie. We're moving to Malaysia in January and we're going traveling for 12 months. We're still going to be working, but we're only going to be working 3-4 hours a day. But the business is now supporting our lifestyle goals. And it wouldn't be able to do that if we were doing things differently to the way it's being done now, I think. So I think it's important, if you're watching this, is like, take what Charlie's saying to heart. It's like, it's not necessarily, you don't need to do a course and you don't need to replicate what I've done or what Charlie's done or what any influencer and any kind of network's done. Just do what your gut's telling you is right, and then try and hone in what your gut, like, try and improve your gut instinct on this stuff. I just wish more people would do that. But look, Charlie, man, I could sit here all day talking to you about this stuff because, you know, we are very aligned in regards to that. And, you know, it's like the meeting of the minds a little bit. You know, it's nice to talk to someone that has a analytical understanding of what makes people make decisions and being able to have a candid discussion about why they do that. So I really appreciate you jumping on and having a chat. I'll end on one question though, right? So you mentioned right at the sort of the start about how at 17, 18, you were sort of floundering a bit. You know, you were addicted to video games, and you talk about in a recent video about how you want to get to $100 million, and you unpack a lot of that in there. Now, what would you go back in time, knowing what you know now and knowing what you got you to 7 figures? What would you run back and mentor and tell 18-year-old Charlie to do at 18 that you now know at 26, 27, that would like make the jump a lot faster and a lot quicker?
I'm 24, by the way.
Oh, you're 24. Wow. Wow. You're an old soul.
I'm messing with you. Probably just 3 words: do the work. Honestly, just do the work. That's probably like no, I would say you can either sacrifice your ego or your goal. Just pick. That's probably the thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd say do the work and then just sacrifice yourself, not in a physical manner or a spiritual manner, but I just mean objectively observe who you are in your current sense of self. Ask yourself if that person is capable of accomplishing what you want to accomplish, and if not, let it go. But keep your values. That's kind of what I did. But if I could scream it even louder, that's what I would have screamed.
One last question. I know I said I'll let you go, but that just opens another question up for me.
Sure.
Would you, knowing what you know now and knowing what you know, the path that you've been on and where you're at, would you tell that 18-year-old self to go down this path?
Yes. 100%.
Why is that?
Because I love my life. I'm unbelievably happy and fulfilled. And I'm I love my life. I love how things are going. I wake up every day excited and happy to wake up. I want to work. I love it. And I think that's the most rewarding thing above the money or anything. I just actually love what I do, and I feel connected to it. And I would not pick or choose another path because I'm so happy, and it means so much to me to be able to have the privilege to run the company I do, work with the clients I do, have the audience I have, the team I have. I'm just unbelievably grateful. And I think to say I deserve it would be fair, because you kind of get what you deserve in business. But every day I do wonder why I've been so blessed with what I've got. I love it. I'm so happy. And I wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest. I'm so happy, basically. That's why. So, yeah.
Dude, I'm just glad you discovered that at the age you did. It took me a very long time. And I'm not that much older than you, but I spent 20 years of my life pretty much doing things that I instinctually knew that I didn't want to do forever.
Yeah.
And it takes that is the reason why you should do something. That what you're saying there is the reason you should start an agency or build a course or do something, is because you want to create something that you love to do, not because of the money, not because of the thing. You want to do something that creates a means to an end. I joined the Navy as a means to an end. I wanted to, prove to myself that I could do it, set myself up. But I didn't, it wasn't the thing. It was the agency. It was this that I wanted to do. And I didn't realize that until I started doing it. And I think, we'll just end on that. I think if you're an 18-year-old, 19-year-old wondering if you should start an agency, don't think about the money. Don't think about that. Because, quite frankly, at 18 years old, money, you're never going to be able to spend enough of it. You don't have the overheads, the expenses or anything like that to whatever. But, you should be doing it for exactly the reason Charlie said there, is to do something that you wake up every day and genuinely enjoy and genuinely get satisfaction out of. Because as someone that's a little bit older and a little bit further along, that is worth 1,000,000 times more than any amount of money is. And there's a lot of billionaires and millionaires and people with a huge networks that don't ever go their whole life finding that. And they're the ones that end up, on drugs or finding other channels to try and find that. I will agree with Charlie on that. It is, if you are doing it for the right reasons, it's one of the most rewarding things you can possibly do. You're always fault finding. You're always finding new novel things to do. You're rewarded for creativity. You're rewarded for lateral thinking. Doesn't matter if you're doing a course or starting an agency or building an online product. It's all the same. It's the principles that apply. And if you're wanting to start that for that, you'll have no better career. You'll have no better job. You'll have no better nothing. It's really that good. Yeah. So Charlie, man, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Hopefully that's motivated a few people to start on the right footing.
I hope so.
And if you ever want to chat, how does someone find you? How does someone find your channel?
Just hop on YouTube.
How can people get in touch with you?
Just hop on YouTube and type in Charlie Morgan. Should pop up. If I've done my job properly.
You lie. There is another Charlie Morgan who is a bookie.
Oh.
And he's got a lot of videos on YouTube. Damn. So you're gonna have to outgrow him. You're gonna have to get to at least 10,000 subs.
I'll be there soon, no doubt. Pleasure, Jimmy. Talk to you later, man.
Dude. Thanks, mate. Thanks so much.